Hi, this is Christina Everett, executive producer of podcasts at iHeartRadio. You're about to listen to an episode recorded live at PodMax. Enjoy the show.
Today on Inspired Money.
It's interesting because not that this is the advice I would ever give anyone, but one of the things he said to me that kind of made this realization, I was about 8 months into working for him. I think it was his fourth or fifth product that he had invented. And he said, I knew when I was willing to mortgage my house that this was the one. Whoa.
This is episode 133 with founder of Inspired Focus Digital, Jaime Harmon O'Connor. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. There can be extreme highs and lows. Today, we're talking with Jaime Harmon O'Connor, and to be an entrepreneur is in her blood. She sold scrunchies in fourth grade, had a grocery delivery business, an event operations company, a social enterprise company. She's built marketing teams at venture-backed organizations and bootstrapped product brands that achieved 6x growth. Today, she runs a digital marketing agency that helps clients with Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and email marketing strategies. In this episode, you'll learn that sometimes starting a company means not paying yourself for extended periods, and I'm talking 2, 3, 4 years. Jaime's experiences, including the differences between working at product-based companies and service companies. And we talk some about paid digital media strategies. Now let's get inspired with Jaime Harmon O'Connor. Jaime, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
It's so good to be here, Andy. I'm excited to chat today.
Let's jump right in.
Okay.
What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
Oh, this is a hard one. I have to admit that the first thing that comes to mind is actually when I was 8 years old and my parents filed for bankruptcy.
Ooh.
And I don't think that I really knew, but I just knew that it felt like we didn't have anything. So that was probably my earliest memory. That was a bit of a roller coaster after that.
You said you were 8?
I was 8, yeah.
What did you understand?
I understood that my parents didn't have their jobs anymore and that we were going to have to move because we didn't have money. Like, I think that those words were probably said in there at some point. Because prior to that, I don't even remember money being a thing in any capacity. So, and I come from an entrepreneurial family. That was actually the first of, I think, either 2 or 3 times that my dad has filed for bankruptcy. So I've seen him go up and down, like make millions and lose everything a couple times now.
Oh, so you've seen extremes.
Oh, I have. Yeah, for sure.
And not just once. It sounds like several times.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I guess probably twice. He ended up building a very successful home building company that he didn't have to shut down, but personally during this last major recession, which hit home building very, very hard, he ended up having to file for bankruptcy again personally. So I definitely saw the highs of doing very well in the housing boom and then what was the resulting aftermath of everything that happened. So, yeah.
And interestingly, you did not end up just being an accountant somewhere that has like a super steady job. You're an entrepreneur too.
Oh man, no, I got my dad's blood for sure. Luckily, I think I've been a bit more stable than he was. He's a bit more of a gambler than I am. And I think I learned that lesson by watching him for sure, which is a valuable lesson to me today. But I took the entrepreneurial red pill at a very young age, so I couldn't really look back.
So those lessons of being able to manage risk and understanding the difference between like risk and gambling. I saw on LinkedIn, you wrote a piece that I really liked entitled Pure Joy of Facing Fear.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I wrote that my husband and I went to Thailand for a month last year, and I had not ridden on a scooter.
Motorized two-wheeler.
Yeah. Not scooter like a kid's toy, but a 50cc kind of scooter since I was 15, and I had a really awful crash in Costa Rica. Nearly hit a truck, slid 100 yards, had road rash all the way up and down my body, and
What do you remember from that accident?
I remember deciding to slide it to avoid a truck.
Was it happening in slow motion?
Yeah, it kind of did feel like, from my memory, that's kind of what it felt like. And the truck driver actually stopped and picked us up and took us back to a hospital, which was pretty amazing. Overall, it was actually fine. It was deep road rash, but it had definitely scarred me somewhere mentally. And one of the things that my husband and I had really, really wanted to do was take this one particular road from Chiang Mai to Pai. And it has, I think, something like, I'm probably off on this, but 763 turns, like hairpin turns on it. And, I've taken all these risks. I've skydived and bungee jumped, and I've done all of these things. But for whatever reason, getting on a scooter
took you back to that day when you were 15.
Yeah. And I was going to go for it. I remember us getting to the place. We rented the scooters. We got on them, and I had this panic attack, nearly just losing it in the parking lot, barely getting out. We get to a light, and it's Thailand and Chiang Mai, and it's crazy. And I'm like, what am I doing? This is insane. And I nearly turned around, and I just kept pushing, and I just said, I can do this. I know I can do this. And we got through the city, which was definitely the most hectic part and scary part of riding on a two-wheeled.
I've never been to Chiang Mai, but Bangkok traffic is like the worst traffic I've ever experienced in my life.
And it's a little bit better in Chiang Mai for sure, but it was intense. And on top of it, it was Songkran, which is the Buddhist festival of the New Year, and everybody's throwing buckets of water on you. So I have this like additional thing happening while I'm trying to get over this massive fear I have deep inside of me. And, in the end, it was one of the most amazing things I've been through, because it was an incredible ride. Actually, 120 degrees outside. So every time someone threw a bucket of water on you, it was very welcome because it was so hot. And I had this kind of feeling of release. And out of that, if I look at it, the risk was mental. It was actually not risk in the gambling sense. It was something that was this created thing in my head of that was a barrier, not an actual, if I looked at a risk assessment, what was the worst things that could happen. And out of it, I gained so much. And I think that is so much like what we go through in the entrepreneurial world. And sometimes we can confuse it, where we create these scenarios of how bad something is going to be because of a failure we've experienced before. And in the end, if we can take a step back and see that we're going to gain a lot more from the journey, then it's so worth the risk.
Is that what kept you pushing through? That you had the vision of where you were going to end up?
Yeah. It was, I had read and done all of this research of this incredible ride that you should take if you're going to be there and you're the type of person who would do that. And I didn't want to miss that. I saw what I could experience somewhere in my head, and I did. It was better than what I thought it was going to be. And that is literally the story of what I've experienced in starting businesses and doing the things that I've done over the years as well.
That is such a great metaphor and lesson that can be applied.
Yeah.
Because really, the key point, I think, is that it's like it's being our own worst enemy, and it's all in your head. Yeah,
it definitely is. I mean, that's been my experience for sure. I feel like I actually just went through this, and not the easiest of things, but having to let go of somebody in my business and grow from there. And in my head, it was so horrible and so awful. And in the end, it ended up being okay. But I created this like huge thing in my head of how awful it was going to be. And the same thing I think happens when we're trying to build something new or expand in a new way. We can go two ways. You can either focus on the vision of where it's going to be, or you can focus on how hard it's going to be to get there. And I think focusing on how hard it's going to be to get there makes it so it's a lot harder to step through that door and actually do it.
Right. That often stops you even before you start.
Yeah.
And why many entrepreneurs are like blind optimists.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. The business I had where I ended up losing a lot of money and basically losing my life savings. I was so optimistic about it. I believed so much that I was going to change the world that I couldn't see a single pitfall in it. And that was a huge learning lesson for me too, to try and not be so, I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we can be so enamored with where we want to be and with the vision we have that we won't actually take any of the advice or hear any of the things that people say when it doesn't align with what our vision is.
All right. So you have to tell us, what was this business? That you were so excited about that you poured your life savings and really everything you had into it.
Yeah. It was an e-commerce business, which I think is a huge reason why that's the client I have today. The clients that I take today is e-commerce and product-based businesses. But I had been in service. I had an event management company. I'd had a grocery delivery company. And I was burnt out after the event management with really, really long hours. And I had actually studied economics in college and social enterprise and microfinance and different ways of doing business that are outside the norm. So when I decided I was going to step away from the event management business, and I'd done really well and I had a lot of success without honestly trying that hard. I was very good to school at 26 years old. I decided I wanted to jump into creating a product and a social enterprise that would help nonprofits through business and not just through like a pure fundraising. So I started the Hope Market, and it was basically, I worked with silversmiths to design a piece of jewelry for a specific nonprofit. We would sell it on our website, donate a percentage of the sale of those pieces. And we worked with their fundraising team. So we worked with like Leukemia and Lymphoma Society that had these massive fundraising teams that had fundraising minimums they had to meet. And so this would be one way they could fundraise without having to just ask for money. So if they sold a piece of our jewelry, they would get 30 to 40% of the sale donated back to them. And the idea I had was that whole cut out the middleman piece. It was direct to consumer. So what the wholesale amount we could essentially donate back. There were some issues in the model for sure that caused me to lose a lot of money on that.
Okay, let me think. So conceptually, it sounds like I like the idea that it's having a positive social impact. You're helping nonprofits. It seems like if you come up with the design of the jewelry piece, you're not really having to find the end customer because that's the nonprofit organization's job.
Right.
Because they should have some donors already.
Exactly.
And they're marketing it to those donors.
Yes. Yeah. And, in all honesty, to this day, I still look back on it and I think there's a model there that could work. What I didn't know, because I'd been in service, is that product is capital intensive. It requires a lot of time and money before you can really turn it around. And every time you have profit, you're reinvesting it constantly. And
even if it's costume jewelry.
Yeah,
Like,
it really,
it still takes money.
It still takes money.
Upfront.
There's still capital that has to be spent on the raw materials and whoever is actually casting the silver and all of the pieces that go along with the chains that you have to order. The markup is insane. The numbers actually work, but you have to be willing to continually put the profits and the money back in for years. I mean, most product businesses that are bootstrapping are putting that money in and not making a profit and not paying yourself for 2-3 years. And that was something I had been really naive to when I went into it. And 2 years in, probably was about a year away from being able to pay myself. And I couldn't do it anymore. Like at that point, I'd lost the light. I'd lost the vision and I couldn't see how I could turn it around.
What were the early signs that things were going south?
It was actually more mental than it was business per se. But I would say the fact that I was struggling every single month to get any kind of significant sales, and I was 2 years in.
And the product was made.
The product was made. Oh, no, yeah. I had it until about 8 months ago because I couldn't quite let it go. So, yeah. And the capital was gone. At that point, I mean, my savings was gone and I was on to credit card debt at that point.
So it's getting worse. It's not getting better.
Yeah, it was getting worse. It wasn't getting better. I was still putting every dollar that came in back into the company, but I was still having to put money on credit cards and do other pieces because I had to pay for advertising and I had to do other pieces because the model itself, I think, had potential and had legs, but it took so much to educate people on why they should be selling these pieces of jewelry for their fundraising efforts versus other things they'd done historically. So
you were able to secure some of those relationships?
Yeah, I had relationships with Leukemia Lymphoma Society. That was my biggest one. Children's Hospital of Denver, another organization called Mountain to Mountain. So that part of it was super successful. And I think my years in business before, I had built a strong reputation of my work ethic and people trusted that they believed I could do something with this.
What was the price point?
It was around $75 per necklace. So it wasn't crazy, but it was pricey. I do remember, I mean, there were these glimmers of light that probably helped me hanging on for longer than I probably should have. But things like people buying something off the website that had no connection, but they had a mom or a sister that was dying of leukemia and they wanted to wear it to honor them or give it to them to give them hope every day. And it was like, oh my God, that's why I'm doing this. So yeah, I mean, it was around the time where I knew I had to get a full-time job again. And I would say that was actually probably one of the mistakes that I made was trying to go full on into it. Because I hadn't worked for someone else in so long. I couldn't imagine getting a full-time job to pay the bills on a daily basis while also trying to build this business on the side. That was probably one of the things that took me down was that I was trying to live off of also building that business when it's a hard one to do if you don't have enough capital to live off of on the side.
How much credit card debt had you accumulated?
So not that much. I had about 100,000 in savings, and so that's what I used to. So
that funded the business.
That funded the business, yeah. And so I ended up only putting about $15,000 on credit card debt. So it wasn't so unmanageable that you felt like you could never get out of it or file for bankruptcy. But more than I'd never had credit card debt before that point. So it was definitely something that was hard to swallow for me. The most credit card debt I've ever had, I think probably the most I will ever have, that I know I can't pay off in a month, I guess, if that makes sense.
Coming up, Jaime returns to work for a steady paycheck, but she can't shake the entrepreneurial bug. We talk Facebook ads and more, right after this short break. The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/133. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to learn more about Jaime, her company, or other things mentioned in this episode. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Today I want to talk about risk tolerance. As of this recording, the U.S. S&P 500 index has declined by more than 26% year to date. And depending on where you are, schools may be closed, you may be working remotely, and now you're very familiar with the words social distancing. Coronavirus has infected more than 181,000 people globally and has claimed over 7,100 lives. The numbers are increasing exponentially, and we're still just in the very early stages. The big question is, will the virus be contained, or will it be a prolonged period of increasing cases? We don't know how big an impact coronavirus will have on the economy and on earnings of corporations. Whether you make changes to your investments today largely depends on your risk tolerance. Risk tolerance is often seen as reflecting your age, with younger people having a longer time horizon and therefore being able to accept more risk. Typically, this means investing in more stocks than bonds. While age is a factor, it's not the only one. People are living longer, and that can also mean remaining aggressive investors for longer. Taking age completely out of the picture, those with a high net worth can often afford to take more risk than those who don't have much money. In other words, if you're cash strapped, you can't afford to lose as much. Another factor in assessing your risk tolerance includes determining your priorities. How much are you saving and investing? And are you being realistic about your investment experience? So should you be making any changes to your portfolio right now? The answer is, it depends. If you want to be like Warren Buffett and you can afford to take a long-term approach, then yes, I think you can stay the course. You can expect increased volatility in the near term, but you're investing with the assumption that the long-term trend is going to be in your favor. Things should be better a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. If you have a shorter time horizon, though, and that usually means that you're near retirement, or if you cannot afford to lose, then maybe it's prudent to take some profits today. Keep some cash in reserve and wait to see how things play out. As the number of coronavirus cases increase, I think the market is likely to react to this news. So while conventional wisdom says to stick to your plan and not take drastic measures, you ultimately have to trust your gut and do what feels right for you. In my opinion, the news will get worse before it gets better. I encourage you to stay home and be safe out there. If you're not sure what to do with your investments, please reach out. I'm happy to chat with you. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. If you have a question or want to send me a note, go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy to email me directly. I'd love to hear from you. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong. How stressful was it to burn through your savings and have $15,000 in credit card debt?
It honestly wasn't stressful for me till the end because I had that undying optimism about it.
That it was going to be turned around.
Yeah. I believed so much that it was going to be turned around that until I was like, this is the end. I have to go get a job.
Where were you when you had that realization?
That's a whole nother part of the story that's interesting. I was in Oregon because right as I was deciding that this was probably the end of that and I was going to have to figure out my next journey, whatever that was going to be. And it was probably going to be someone paying me a salary, which was hard to swallow. My husband decided that he, after 13 years running a radio station, being a GM of a radio station and just a super solid career, wanted to become a helicopter pilot. So we decided we were going to move to Oregon and figure out just a whole new life, just like kind of put it all aside and figure out a new life. And it was going to be my turn to carry the weight and get a full-time job. And he was going to go become a helicopter pilot, which he did get 2 licenses. And I did get a full-time job. That was an incredible learning out. It was with a product company that was in the millions in revenue. And I actually got to see what it took to run a company like that and learn lessons from the CEO about how he had not paid himself for 4 years and hear the other side of the story of what happened. And actually,
so that it's not uncommon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I wasn't alone, as it turned out.
Like, oh, welcome to the club.
Yeah. I hadn't gone so far to mortgage my house like he had. And it's interesting because not that this is the advice I would ever give anyone, but one of the things he said to me that kind of made this realization, I was about 8 months into working for him. I think it was his 4th or 5th product that he had invented. And he said, I knew when I was willing to mortgage my house that this was the one. Whoa. And a light bulb went off for me. 2, probably. 1, that certainly it was okay to let go of that last business because I was never willing to do that. And 2, I don't know that I ever would be. And maybe it was because of all that risk I saw my dad do and leveraging a lot of things and then having to file for bankruptcy. And that made me realize that I don't have to be the one creating the product or being the inventor. I can be a support and a strategic partner for the people who are creating these products that they believe are going to change the world.
Service business.
Yes.
You learn the difference between a product and a service.
I can. And I'm really good at that because I can see the strategy that needs to happen and I can help people do that. And I always thought that being an entrepreneur meant that I needed to be the one creating. And that was a huge light bulb moment for me that I could actually make an impact and be a service and be something amazing for people that are creating that helps them do something amazing. And I can make money from it. Not put all my life savings into it.
So how long did you have this salaried job? Yeah. And it's sort of like, I don't know. Is that like a rebound relationship? It's like after you lost your life savings and you're working a job where you're getting a steady paycheck. Why do you go take the leap again? Yeah,
well, because I took the red pill at an early age. I was there a year and 8 months, and it was really amazing. They quadrupled in revenue in the 20 months I was there. And I learned so much. I had gone from being the only person they had ever hired to run marketing to building a team of 5. And it was game changing for me as far as truly understanding the operations of what needs to happen to run a business that's going to be that successful.
They weren't going to give you any equity or ownership?
They were not going to give me equity. And that was kind of...
Would that have changed the
probably, game? It probably would have, because I'd had other jobs before as well and always taken the approach of learning as much as I could and giving as much as I could. And because of, I think, my entrepreneurial tendencies, I treat whatever work I'm doing in like an almost ownership type way. I just care so much about what I'm doing. So I knew about a year in that I was not going to probably get any kind of equity or anything that would be the thing to incentivize me to go be there longer. And I had learned so much in what needed to happen, as well as the operational constraints. And I kept finding that I couldn't find outside partners and agencies, consultants that understood that. They were so one lane all the time. They were focused on the marketing only and not what other factors probably affect the company for why certain things can happen, why they couldn't. And so I started just consulting on the side with the blessing of the CEO. I'd actually went to him and asked him. I felt like that was an important piece. And I started helping other businesses with what I was learning there and what I was doing. And I realized it was so needed. Like, I wasn't the only one wearing 100 hats at a company trying to run marketing, or potentially a lot of times I was working directly with the owners, and that needed somebody that understood how to run it, that how business needs to run, the operational constraints, while also helping to brand and market their business. And I learned so much about what a small business can do with paid digital media that a lot of these small companies were not taking advantage of, these small product brands that had focused on wholesale. And I just saw this ripe opportunity to be not just a client agency relationship, but more of a strategic partnership with these companies to help them grow in that space. After about a year and 8 months, and given my previous experience, my goal was that I was going to double my salary on the side, taking on clients on the side before I quit my job. Because I knew if I was going to do this, I was also going to hire someone. I was going to build a company. I wasn't just going to be a freelancer. And so that was the doubling of my salary so that I would have enough to be able to pay someone else to also help me and bring on more clients and do that. And so here in 8 months into being at the company, I landed a client that made it so I doubled my revenue. Like, I was at 5 clients. No way I could work 9 to 5 anymore. I was getting up at 5 a.m. and working till midnight. It was crazy. And so I put in my notice. And apparently the CEO told me that I had actually told him in the interview I was going to do this at some point, which is pretty funny. But I appreciated that he still took the chance on hiring me and letting me learn from him and helping to grow his company in the way I could, and then take that knowledge to help other people. So yeah.
How important was paid digital advertising to quadrupling the revenues at that company?
I believe it was a hugely important piece of it. It wasn't the reason. The product itself, which is something I tell a lot of my clients, was the core reason, because it was an amazing product that people love. But I think what it did was it brought both brand to the table, and it opened up this whole other sales channel for them that was high margin that they hadn't been able to crack because they'd been so focused on mainly wholesale. They also were a little bit of a promotional product, but we were able to take their online revenue and quadruple it in and of itself, going from about 10% of their yearly revenue to about 30% of their yearly revenue. And then what I like to point out to a lot of brands that have focused on wholesale is that by adding that component, you're adding the sales channel that's direct to consumer, but also all of those retailers and wholesaler brands are seeing that advertising too. So there's this compound effect that happens that, while I love the data, and part of what I love about the paid media side is that for the first time ever, we can actually see our immediate effect of the advertising, but there is this halo effect that is absolutely helping your company.
And that's the branding and marketing.
Yeah. That in the past, we were buying radio ads and we were buying TV ads and we were buying magazine ads in the hope that it was going to affect the sales in the long term. And we looked at the numbers year over year and it was like, well, maybe it was marketing or maybe it was our sales team. We don't really know. But now we can actually say, I'm getting a return on my money or more in our direct sales channel right now with the marketing I'm spending. And there's definitely a halo effect that helps our sales team be able to sell better to all of those wholesalers and retailers and remind them to come back and purchase again, which is, we're in a different world now than we were even 5 years ago or 10 years ago, which is pretty amazing for a small company to have access to that level of advertising ability.
I interviewed Mike Grillo, who is CEO of Gravity Products. They sell the Gravity blankets.
Yeah.
And they started by doing direct-to-consumer because they had one of the most successful crowdsourcing campaigns, and that's how they launched their product. But he feels very strongly that you don't want just one channel. You can't be a direct-to-consumer business. He feels that it's very important to also be in wholesale and have both.
Yeah.
Do you share that sentiment?
I absolutely share that. I actually get really nervous when, and I, to be totally honest, tend to not take on clients who are relying solely on direct to consumer. I think it's a really dangerous path. I think it's the path I got into that was very dangerous for myself. And I think any stable business doesn't put all their eggs in one basket.
Diversification is important.
Yes, so important. So it's definitely a piece I heavily recommend to my clients if they're not already in wholesale to be exploring that option or exploring other avenues that would work for additional channels. I actually have worked with one client that now is heavily getting into a few different avenues, really creative avenues of getting their product onto the market that's not just direct to consumer, not just wholesale, but they're like partnering with event companies to use their products as gifts for attendees and doing some different things that are a B Corp. So they have this, additional piece of giving back, which I love. But they nearly lost everything because they grew to a couple million a year in revenue solely from Facebook ads. And then a couple small changes happen, and all of the sudden, your entire way that you're getting your word out there and your entire function of how you're making money is going down the tubes, and you don't have anything else to rely on. So absolutely, I completely agree with him that that's important.
You talked about the importance of having a great product.
Yeah.
With your company, Inspired Focus Digital, does that come into play in selecting the clients that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the reality of the situation is no matter how much we can build great strategy and great advertising that gets the word out, if you have a product that somebody buys once and never wants to come back and doesn't recommend to anyone else, there is no business.
There's no amount of marketing.
There's no amount of marketing. In fact, a very good colleague and very good friend that is a colleague of mine and someone I've learned a lot from, Jason Portnoy. He's got a great podcast as well. He said he likes to point out that if you don't have a good business or a good product, all marketing is going to do is accelerate the exposure of that. And that's totally true. I've been lucky to work with really amazing companies and haven't yet had to experience something like that. And I think now I'm well versed enough to be able to recognize those things. And a lot of times what'll end up happening if I get on the phone with someone who has those cracks is I'll give consulting advice to say, hey, look at fixing these things before you dive into spending the money here, because you're just going to end up losing it.
So your agency, are you mainly focused on paid ads on social?
Yeah. So our focus is e-commerce consultancy. So we'll give the overall consulting aspect of what to do on your website, product, those pieces of it. And then we handle the paid media strategy for Facebook and Google ads and a little bit of email automation, or we'll train your internal team. So it's either done for you or done with you kind of situation.
Are those clients mostly selling products on their website, or are they selling on Amazon?
It is a big combination. The majority of the people we work with actually started in the wholesale side and really want to expand their direct-to-consumer channel. Sometimes they have their Amazon stores. Typically, they're really wanting to expand their own direct-to-consumer store and really grow that as an additional channel for their product brand.
So what can you teach us about Facebook ads? Can a financial advisor use Facebook ads? Can a podcast effectively grow an audience through Facebook ads?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The reality is your audience is on Facebook. Everyone to some extent is on Facebook or Instagram that exists within your audience. And so there is absolutely a way to take advantage. The core key is knowing who your audience is and really understanding how to speak to them, to their pain points. Because you can spend a ton of money and target the right people, but if you're not speaking to what they actually resonate with, it's not going to make a difference.
That makes sense. So you have to identify the ideal person, that avatar, that persona, and know their pain points, because that way you can market that to them.
Yeah.
That's going to hopefully tap into an emotion that's going to get them to engage or click and take a step.
And take a step and be a part of it. And I would say the other really important pieces are to know what your objective and your goals are. And you need to know your numbers. What is your cost per acquisition? What are you willing to spend on that? Because if you don't know those things, then you can't actually make really smart decisions in your ad buying and where you want to go, or the person, the agency, whoever you're working with, can't make those decisions in a smart way that can help your business.
Are there guidelines or benchmarks for that?
Depending on the industry, most industries do have it, but every industry it's so vast. So it'd be hard to say specific to an industry. I know a lot of the e-commerce side of things. And one thing that I think is a huge thing to know is that on the direct to consumer side, unlike marketing spend overall, where you hear, somewhere between 5 and 10% of top line revenue, direct to consumer companies are often spending 20 to 25% of top line revenue to drive those sales. And that is a piece a lot of people miss.
Image or video?
I am a video fan all day long, especially right now, for a lot of reasons. But I think you can tell your story a lot better.
And you think that works? That really works well in a Facebook ad.
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, we do run a combination of them, but I think video all day long is more engaging. You can tell your story better. And there's a lot of function to be able to retarget and capture those people so they continue to see you and actually build brand.
So your clients, I'm guessing they're trying to sell the product. Is that the call to action most of the time with the ad, or is it something else?
So I believe in a cross between brand and performance. So while a lot of Facebook marketers will focus on buy my stuff, I like to have a combination of building tribe, authority, and trust while also explaining why you should buy the product. So we'll run for any given brand, we might have 50 to 100 ads running. And what our hope is that we'll have people see a combination of things that get them really engaged with the brand and trusting the brand, while also seeing why they should buy their products, which creates this situation where they're hopefully choosing that brand over whatever other brand, as well as coming back and telling their friends and engaging in a longer term way.
This is outside your realm of business, I think, typically. But for a podcaster, and most podcasters, independent podcasters, are not monetizing their podcast. If they choose to use Facebook ads, what should their strategy be? So
what I would say, I particularly, it would be a lot to go deep into this. It'd be a whole podcast in and of itself. But there is a gentleman called Kurt Malley. I use his strategy. It's called The Belt. And truly amazing guy, but he uses $1 a day strategy. So my recommendation would be to take the bite-sized pieces of your podcasts, turn them into kind of those little video type pieces, and then run them at $1 a day each. So maybe have 10 to 15 to drive the traffic into it. And then you could run all of those same ones again, retargeting essentially. So you're spending $10, $20 a day, and you're really getting exposure to the audience that you want. But there's obviously a lot deeper into that strategy, but that would be, if you wanted to learn more, I'd look up Kurt Malley and the belt method, because it works, and it would work for that.
Cool. Jaime, I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
I would say I define success by waking up feeling excited about the day and not stressed out.
Sounds simple.
Yeah.
But
some days, there are some days where I wake up feeling that way.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. And can you tell the Inspired Money listener how they can follow you and find out more about your company and business?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to inspiredfocusdigital.com/inspiredmoney, I will have a bit of information about me. You can also get a guide on picking the right agency partner, as well as how to create some content that will resonate with your audience. And if you want to hop on a strategy call with me, you can book a call there as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? I really enjoyed speaking with Jaime and hearing her different experiences, from working at a product-based company that was growing revenues at a really fast clip to being an entrepreneur and the risks and reward associated with being a business owner. And then my big takeaway was hearing the risks of having a product-based business, because manufacturing a product requires capital, whereas being a service-based business helping other product-based businesses has less risk. It's a different type of risk. And I think that that is a valuable lesson today. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment or thoughts on today's topic, message me on Instagram by going to instagram.com/inspiredmoney.fm. Don't forget the .fm. If you like this episode, please do me a favor and share it with someone, or post on social media and tag a friend. For that, I'd be extremely grateful. If you're not yet subscribed, I hope that you'll do it now so that you won't miss next week's show. I'll see you then. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kimo West. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.